And let's turn to NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray and Brendan Buck, former communications advisor to Presidents Ryan and Boehner. So, Mark, Michigan's Kent County is one of the 7 counties that NBC has been tracking. What could Kent County tell us about which way Michigan's going to go?
Yeah, this is one of the most historically Republican counties in Michigan, Andrea. And, this was a county, the home place of Gerald Ford. Mitt Romney won it by 8 percentage points in 2012. You still ended up having Donald Trump. That went down to just a 3-point victory for him in 2016. And then Joe Biden ended up winning it by 6 percentage points. And as we end up seeing that President Biden's, numbers have kind of decreased a little bit, including in Michigan, he has to win at Kent County by that kind of margin. That was the secret to his success in 2020. He has to replicate it to win again in 2024.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton barely went to Michigan, and that was one of her problems. And Brendan, let's talk about Michigan and Donald Trump. It's critical for him, and you've got Arab and Muslim voters, young voters, all angry at Joe Biden, or many of them angry and frustrated with Joe Biden. Are they going to vote for Donald Trump? Are they going to stay home?
Yeah, that's the question, obviously, or that's the issue that Donald Trump is trying to press. He's stirring the pot quite a bit. And look, I don't think that the Biden campaign has made the case enough with those voters there about what the actual alternative is. We know that they have they've paid quite a bit of attention now trying to ease the concerns of that population, particularly in that state. There's a huge population there of Arab and Muslim Americans. Donald Trump's campaign, in a lot of ways, has been trying to poke holes in Biden vulnerabilities, whether it's with black voters or young voters. Now, in a lot of places, that feels like a bit of overreach. You're probably not going to win this election on the back of black voters if you're Trump. But in Michigan, this could be the deciding factor. And I think as Trump becomes more front and center, Biden will have a bigger opportunity to say, I know that you're mad at me about how I've handled the situation in Gaza, but look at the alternative that you have here. To date, he's sort of been, it's been as much of a referendum on Joe Biden. I think over the next few months, he'll be able to make much more of a choice between the two of them.
And Mark, with the debate just next week, we understand now that the coin toss has gone to Donald Trump, so he will have the last word.
And, sometimes you want to have the last word, Andrea. Of course, in sometimes debates, you want to actually do very well at the beginning when most people are tuning in. And, at the end of the day, this is going to be a very big moment that we'll see, with a lot more moments to come.
And, Brendan, what are the stakes right now? Who has the most to prove in this debate? Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's easy to say Joe Biden. Usually the incumbent president typically doesn't do very well. They're not used to having people challenge them in situations like this, and they haven't debated in a long time. And obviously, we'll be looking very closely to see how Joe Biden is able to perform, how fast he is on his feet. What's helpful for Joe Biden is that expectations have been lowered so incredibly low, as we saw with the State of the Union. Republicans had basically presented an image that Joe Biden was going to melt the moment he stood up there to give his speech. And if he's able to get through with an even historically average performance, that could be fine. I do think that Donald Trump himself also, there is a lot of pressure because he himself has not been in a position to be challenged or have to debate anybody in a while. As we know, he surrounds himself with a lot of yes people and lives in his own little bubble. So I think this is the first time that we've been able to see these two men on a debate stage, either of them, in a very long time. And the perception of who is really on top of their game, I think, could have a much greater impact than debates typically do.
And Mark, very briefly, right now, the Trump campaign and their allies, with a lot of these trumped-up media, videos, taking them out of context, distorting them, whatever, from G7 and other places, are trying to portray the president as weak, feeble, out of it.
This is why the debate really does matter. You're going to see millions of Americans tune in, be able to judge them side by side, both see the contrast, the comparison. And I think that's why this is going to be big, Andrea.